We need to talk about testing and the Bahrain Grand Prix because it is race week. Yes, hello everyone and welcome back to the BaxtyB F1 channel, and today we are going to be talking about pre-season testing and of course the Bahrain Grand Prix, and I will be giving you my prediction for who I think is going to take pole position, the race win, and who will be joining the race winner on the podium. But of course we have just had 3 days of testing in Bahrain. Everyone has been poring over the data and making their judgments, and invariably all of us will be wrong. But I'm going to give it a go anyway, somebody who's not that technically minded, and I'm just giving you my opinion on where I think the 10 teams are after 2023 testing, and kind of just giving you how I feel about it and see where they are. Now I'm going to try something different. Let's see if this works. Oh, look at that. It's nice, isn't it? So my testing ranking, starting at number 10 with AlphaTauri. They completed the most laps, but the car just didn't look like it had that much pace. It looked like it was porpoising quite a lot as well, and I just not getting a good vibe from AlphaTauri. I think Tsunoda and De Vries might be in for a pretty tricky season, but they can prove me wrong. Absolutely. I mean, AlphaTauri do traditionally go well at Bahrain, so perhaps they may well do better than I have anticipated. Number 9, I have got Williams. I think Williams are going to make a step forward this year. I think they have a better driver lineup, and the car definitely looks like it has more pace. Albon and Sargent were both talking about how that car had less unpredictability than it did last year, and it looks like it's an easier car to drive, it's more reliable. They've had a really strong test, but I think they were coming from so far back that I could only really put them as high as P9. I'm not anticipating Williams to all of a sudden be in the midfield, but hopefully this is the beginning of a resurgence for Williams, because I hate having Williams near the back of the grid. Number 8, unfortunately, I have to go for McLaren. They had an awful test. Lando Norris looked really despondent at the end of the test. He couldn't really hide his feelings. They had issues with the numbers from the wind tunnel and the numbers from the aero test not correlating. Also had issues where there was problems with the brakes. Similar issue to the one they had last year, though the positive is that they do think that can be fixed in time for the Grand Prix this weekend. And also another positive is that Oscar Piastri looked really comfortable behind the wheel of the car. He looked like he was getting on top of it. It could be that he's a bit more consistent than Daniel Ricciardo, which will help the team if they do get back into that 4th place fight, help them make it, because that's something that really let them down last year. Now, P7, I've gone for Alpine. This is an interesting one. Alpine didn't complete as many laps as most of the other teams. The car looked really bouncy. I know Bahrain is a bouncy track, but that car did look like it was porpoising quite a lot. And the car just didn't look like it had that much pace. I mean, Gasly and Ocon really were not putting in times that were making the other teams sit up and go, yeah, this is the team to look out for. But even still, they were still saying that. A lot of people got Alpine close to sort of maybe 4th, 5th, and I'm just not seeing it with this car. Hopefully they prove me wrong, because I like both the drivers and I want them to do well, but I don't know, something about Alpine just didn't sit right with me. And I don't understand this confidence in them. Now, number 6, I've gone for Alfa Romeo. They had a good moment on day 2. Zhou Guanyu was actually top of the timesheets, and Bottas looked like he was showing some decent pace. Did have an engine problem on day 3, but that was fixed relatively quickly. Better to have that problem now in testing than in the race in a few days' time. But what I will say is I think that Alfa are looking in decent shape. I think very similar to last year, I think they're going to have a good start to the season, and they could well contend for some of those lower points. And it'll be interesting to see the qualifying gap between the two as well. We know that Bottas is a good qualifier. Can Zhou get closer to him? He was starting to towards the end of last season. Number 5, Haas. Now, at the end of day 1, I had Haas in 10th. They looked awful. But over the course of the following 2 days, they really started to get a tune out of the car, and the experience of Hülkenberg and Magnussen really started to show. I think Haas have got a fairly decent package here. I hope it's not another case of that they start off well and then fall back, because we know that Haas don't have the biggest upgrade package in the world. They don't have the biggest budget for it. So it could be that Haas burn brightly at the start of the season before sort of withering away back to the back of the field by the time the season ends. But if there are drivers capable of outperforming that car and getting decent points, it is Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen. I think Haas are in decent shape. Now, P4 Aston Martin, the absolute story of testing. From the absolute lows when Felipe Drugovich goes 4 corners and his car breaks down, to then the highs of people having them in the same breath as Mercedes and Ferrari. I haven't quite got them as high. I think they were probably showing a bit more than the 3 teams in front of them. But Aston Martin have got pace and they have made a big step forward. Obviously, there's a few question marks here because Lance Stroll missed the test. He's injured. There are question marks as to whether he's going to make it to the Bahrain Grand Prix. Rumours to either broken 1 or 2 wrists. We don't quite know. But they do. What this test showed primarily is that Felipe Drugovich will go into that car and do a job. But also, Fernando Alonso looks like he is hooked up. And I think that Aston Martin is looking very, very, very strong. And if Mercedes and or Ferrari and or Red Bull mess up, then Aston Martin I think will be there to take advantage. But it is good to see the green of Aston Martin doing well and actually saying what, achieving potentially what they want to, which is moving forward. Aston Martin have World Championship ambitions in the future, and they look like they're on the right track. Now, number 3, Mercedes. This is where it's going to get a little bit complicated, a little bit techie, as my good friend Cameron would say. Mercedes had a really up and down test. Day 1, no porpoising, car looked good. Performance, okay, a little bit middling. But you know what? The fact that the car was stable was a massive plus for the team. Day 2 wasn't quite as good. The balance of the car wasn't quite there. They were losing performance at the rear of the car. And then obviously they lost the last hour and a half of the running because Russell suffered a hydraulic issue. Again, like Alfa Romeo and other teams that may have had breakdowns, better to have that now than in the race this weekend. But I feel like the Mercedes fan base is kind of on a really broad spectrum. You've got those that are sort of at the lower end, basically just saying, we do not believe that this is going to be our year. The car doesn't look that great. The zero side pod seems to be an issue. But then also you have the potential, there's something going past my house right now. You have those in the middle where I am cautiously optimistic, basically saying that we believe that it's possible, that the car is competitive, there's no bouncing, but we're not getting ahead of ourselves because the 2 teams in front do look like they're quicker. And there are even those that are saying that they are supremely confident that Mercedes have got something in their back pocket and they're going to go off and win races. I don't agree with that philosophy. I don't quite agree with the philosophy down here as well, where they're talking down Mercedes' chances. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think they're ahead of Aston Martin, but I think 3rd place is as high as I am prepared to put Mercedes. Now in 2nd place we have got Ferrari. Ferrari 1 lap pace looked good, and I think they're hiding something. I don't think Leclerc and Sainz showed their full hand. I think once that car gets turned up to full, I think we're going to see some serious pace out of that Ferrari. But there were a couple of causes for concern. There was porpoising, and there was also high tyre deg, which is something that blighted them in the back end of last season and really stunted Charles Leclerc's chances to go after Max Verstappen. If those issues are still remaining, no amount of strategy redos are going to help you. You are going to get eaten up by Red Bull. But I hope for a competitive championship's sake and for Ferrari's sake that they can get on top of those issues ahead of the Bahrain Grand Prix this week. And I hope that Ferrari are here to stick it out because that car looks in decent nick, but it's got a long way to go. Then, number 1, Red Bull, the RB19, described in God tier by Will Buxton, and to be fair, he's not wrong. This car looked ridiculous. Set the fastest time of the test on day 3. Checo Perez doing a 1:30.3, which is 2 tenths quicker than Charles Leclerc's pole lap of last year, and generally the cars do seem to be quicker, which is an improvement. But yeah, that car was frightening. That's Checo Perez doing it. Could you imagine Max Verstappen if he was given that Saturday evening running? I mean, I think Red Bull are going to be pretty dominant in the early races. Obviously, the problem for them is that they're going to have penalties applied to them, and they're going to start to bite at some point in the season for the cost cap breach. That is where I think we'll see Max Verstappen and Checo Perez catch up. But certainly, it's if you're a Red Bull fan, I'd be very, very happy with how the test went, and I would feel supremely confident heading into Bahrain. Okay, speaking of the Bahrain Grand Prix, let's talk about predictions. Let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so we've gone for a slightly different setup this time, but I do believe this is going to be a strong weekend for Red Bull. I'm predicting Max Verstappen to take pole position, and I'm predicting Max Verstappen to win the race. I also believe that it is going to be a Red Bull 1-2, and I also believe that Lewis Hamilton is going to get on the podium. I think in qualifying, I think Verstappen will probably be ahead. I think the Ferraris will be closer, but I think they will probably drop off in the race, allowing Perez and Hamilton to come past. And I also think that I've gone for Hamilton in P3 because I think he is somebody who can really pick his way through a field and take advantage of an opportunity to grab a podium when other cars look out of sight. Yeah, I think he's going to be fighting with the Ferraris. I think he's going to be fighting with the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso. And of course, he will be fighting with his teammate George Russell as well. But yes, that is my prediction for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Verstappen on pole, Verstappen win, Checo P2 for a Red Bull 1-2, Hamilton P3. And you know what? I actually think we might see Felipe Drugovich race this weekend as well. Well guys, that is all I've got time for today. Those are my thoughts on testing and my predictions for the Bahrain Grand Prix. If you've enjoyed this video and if you enjoyed any of my content, then please do hit the subscribe button below, and also please feel free to comment. I do try and respond to most comments as and when I can, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to discussing all of this with you, and also discussing what has happened at the Bahrain Grand Prix. I will be doing my first driver ratings and race recap on Monday, and then hopefully I will get to eventually starting the Missing Championship series. I know I've spoken about it briefly. It's the first video is starting to get there. The others I haven't really touched that much, but I'm looking forward to trying to get in depth into those seasons. But yeah, guys, if you want to see that, if you want to see any more of my content, hit the subscribe button below, as I said. Hit the bell notification so you know when my videos go live. And until next time, guys, stay safe, and I shall speak to you all very, very soon.